Amara's shift had started like any other at the Grand Opal Hotel, a glittering fortress of wealth in downtown Atlanta. She moved through the wedding setup, arranging silverware, refilling water pitchers, her hands steady despite the ache in her feet. Her life was a treadmill: work, hospital visits to her brother Jamal, and dodging eviction notices. At 26, she learned to keep her head down, to let the world's sharp edges graze past her. But tonight, the air felt heavy, like a storm brewing. She overheard guests whispering about the bride, Elise, whose father owned half the city's tech startups, and the groom, Ethan, a charming councilman with a smile that won elections. Amara didn't care for their world, but she noticed Elisa's kindness, a rare warmth in a place where staff were invisible. Earlier, Elise had slipped her a $50 bill, saying, "You're working harder than anyone here." Amara had tucked it away, thinking of Jamal's next prescription. As the night wore on, Amara's thoughts drifted to 2 years ago when she'd worked at a dive bar across town. Ethan had been a regular, always charming, always tipping well. One night, after too many whiskeys, he'd leaned across the counter and confessed something dark, a fling with his campaign manager that he'd buried to protect his image. Amara had listened, nodded, and let it go. She was just a bartender then, just a waitress now, nobody. But that memory clung to her like damp clothes, and tonight, seeing Ethan at the altar, it burned. The banquet hall buzzed with anticipation as the speeches began. Amara lingered near the bar, her tray heavy with empty glasses. She caught snippets of Derek's speech, his tone dripping with arrogance. He was Ethan's college friend, now his lawyer, the kind of man who thrived on attention. When he hinted at Ethan's wild past, the crowd laughed, but Amara's chest tightened. She knew where this was going. Derek wasn't just joking. He was about to expose Ethan's betrayal, not to hurt him, but to steal the spotlight. Amara saw Elisa smile falter, her hands clutching her dress. Something snapped inside Amara. She'd spent years swallowing insults, ignoring the "just a waitress" sneers. But she couldn't stand by while Elisa's world crumbled publicly. She set her tray down, her pulse racing. The stage was across the room, a world away from her place behind the scenes. Guests brushed past her, oblivious, their laughter grating. She thought of Jamal, his frail body in the hospital bed, his trust in her to keep fighting. She thought of her mother, who'd raised her to do right, even when it hurt. Amara took a breath and moved, her steps quick and sure, weaving through the crowd like a shadow with purpose. Amara reached the stage just as Derek's words turned dangerous. "Ethan's got stories that'd make you blush," he said, grinning. The crowd leaned in, hungry for scandal. Amara's hand closed around the mic, yanking it from Derek's grip. The screech of feedback silenced the room. She felt every eye on her, judging, dismissing. The bride's mother gasped audibly. Ethan's face drained of color. But Amara stood tall, her voice cutting through the tension. "This isn't your story to tell," she said, staring at Derek. "And it's not theirs to hear." She turned to Elise, her heart pounding. "You deserve the truth, but not like this." The room was a frozen tableau. Glasses paused mid-sip, mouths open. Derek tried to laugh it off, reaching for the mic, but Amara stepped back. "You don't get to ruin her day," she said, her voice low but fierce. Elisa's eyes met hers, confused but searching. Amara knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the one holding the truth, and the weight of it was heavier than any trace she'd ever carried. The banquet hall erupted in chaos. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to loud questions. Who is she? What's she talking about? Guests craned their necks, some standing to get a better view. Amara stood on the stage, the mic still in her hand, her breath shallow. Derek's face twisted with anger, but he masked it with a chuckle. "Relax, folks, just a little drama from the help," he said, reaching for the mic again. Amara pulled it away, her eyes locked on Elise. "You don't have to hear this in front of everyone," she said softly, just for her. Elise nodded, tears brimming, and stepped toward the stage, her gown trailing like a ghost. The event manager, a wiry man named Carl, stormed through the crowd, his face red. "Get off the stage now," he hissed at Amara. She didn't move. "I'm not here to ruin anything," she said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "I'm here to protect someone who doesn't deserve to be hurt." The crowd quieted, some nodding, others glaring. Elisa's father, a towering man in a bespoke suit, pushed forward, his voice booming. "What's the meaning of this?" Amara met his gaze. "Ask your son-in-law." Ethan stepped on the stage, his hands raised like a politician calming a crowd. "Everyone, please, let's not make a scene," he said, his voice smooth but strained. He turned to Amara, his eyes pleading. "You don't know what you're doing." But Amara did. She handed the mic to Elise, who took it with trembling hands. "He's the one who needs to talk," Amara said, stepping back. The crowd watched breathless as Ethan's charm crumbled. He looked at Elise, his shoulders slumping. "It was a mistake," he said, his voice cracking. Elise's face hardened. "You lied to me," she said, her voice barely a whisper but amplified by the mic. The gasps poured in, some clutching their pearls, others filming on their phones. Amara felt a pang of guilt. She hadn't wanted to humiliate Elise, only to stop Derek's cruel spectacle. But now the truth was out, raw and ugly. Elise turned to Amara, her eyes soft with gratitude despite the pain. "Thank you," she whispered. Amara nodded, stepping off the stage, her heart heavy but her conscience clear. Carl grabbed Amara's arm as he reached the edge of the crowd. "You're done here," he spat. "Pack your things." Amara yanked her arm free, her voice steady. "I did what was right." She walked to the staff room, her hands shaking as she grabbed her coat. The other waitstaff watched in silence, some with pity, others with awe. Outside, the Atlanta night was cool, the city lights blurring through her tears. She'd lost her job, maybe her only way to keep Jamal in treatment. But as she walked to the bus stop, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Grand Opal Lobby, Elise." Amara stared at the screen, her breath catching. The night wasn't over yet. The next morning, Amara stood in the Grand Opal's lobby, her sneakers scuffing the marble floor. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the chaos of the wedding. Elise arrived, no longer in her wedding gown, but in a simple blazer, her face tired but determined. "You didn't have to do that," Elise said, sitting across from Amara in a quiet corner. "But I'm glad you did." Amara shifted uncomfortably. "I couldn't let him humiliate you." Elise nodded, her eyes searching Amara's. "My father's pulling funding from Ethan's campaign. The wedding's off, and I owe you." Amara shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." But Elise leaned forward, her voice firm. "I checked you out, Amara. You're raising your brother alone, working 3 jobs. You're not just a waitress, you're a fighter." She slid a business card across the table. "My father's opening a new community center. We need someone real to run it, someone like you." Amara stared at the card, her throat tight. It was a job offer, a lifeline. But it meant stepping into a world she'd never belonged to. Amara spent the day wrestling with Elise's offer. She visited Jamal at the hospital, his small hand gripping her as he slept. The bills were piling up, and her savings were gone. The community center job promised stability, a salary, a chance to make a difference. But it also meant scrutiny, responsibility, and leaving behind the invisibility she'd mastered as a waitress. That night, she called her mother, who listened quietly as Amara poured out her fears. "Baby," her mother said, "you stopped a wedding to do right. You can handle this." The next morning, Amara returned to the Grand Opal and met Elisa's father, Marcus Tate. He was imposing, his handshake firm, but his eyes softened when he spoke. "You've got guts," he said. "That's what we need." He outlined the role, managing a center for at-risk youth, organizing programs, building trust. Amara nodded, her voice steady.
I'm in. As she left, Elise caught her arm. One more thing, she said, smiling. I'm funding Jamal's treatment. No arguments. Amara's eyes welled up, but she nodded, speechless. Amara's first day at the community center was chaos, leaky pipes, missing supplies, and skeptical staff. But she walked in with a notebook and a plan, her years of juggling shifts giving her an edge. She met the kids, some wary, others curious, and saw Jamal in their faces. She organized a music workshop, remembering how Jamal loved to sing. By the end of the week, the center had a schedule, and the kids were showing up. Amara felt a spark of hope, but the shadow of the wedding lingered. Derek had been spreading rumors, calling her a troublemaker. She ignored them, focusing on the kids, but deep down, she knew this wasn't over. Derek wasn't done with Amara. He'd lost face at the wedding, and his
Ego couldn't take it. He started digging, using his legal connections to find dirt. He discovered Amara's financial struggles, late rent, medical debts, and began whispering to the hotel's management, painting her as unreliable. One evening, Amara found a letter slipped under her apartment door, a legal notice threatening to sue her for defamation. Her heart sank. She wasn't a lawyer. She couldn't fight this. But as she read the letter, her anger grew. Derek wasn't just targeting her. He was trying to erase her new start. She called Elise, who listened quietly. "He's scared of you," Elise said. "You exposed him as much as Ethan." She connected Amara with a lawyer, a sharp woman named Lena who took the case pro bono. Lena uncovered Derek's own secrets, shady campaign donations tied to Ethan's team. Amara hesitated, not wanting to stoop to his level, but Lena was firm. "You don't have to fight dirty," she said, "just fight smart." Amara agreed, her resolve hardening. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone with a voice, and she'd use it. Amara and Lena dug deeper, finding evidence that Derek had been skimming funds from Ethan's campaign for years. They traced payments to shell companies, invoices that echoed the fraudulent vendors from the Velvet Lantern in the original story. Amara felt a chill. This wasn't just personal, it was systemic. She met with Marcus, who was furious but unsurprised. "This city's full of men like Derek," he said, "but you're not alone." He offered resources, connections, and a promise to back her. Amara spent nights poring over documents, her kitchen table a war zone of coffee cups and sticky notes. She found a pattern. Derek's name on every shady deal, his signature buried in fine print. One night, a kid from the center, a 15-year-old named Ty, overheard her talking about Derek. "I know that guy," Ty said. "He came around last year, promising jobs that never happened." Amara's eyes narrowed. Derek had been preying on the community, too. She thanked Ty, her mind racing. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about justice for everyone he'd hurt. Amara and Lena built a case, presenting it to Marcus and the district attorney. They had evidence, bank records, fake invoices, and Ty's testimony about Derek's false promises. The DA moved quickly, issuing a subpoena. Amara was called to testify at a hearing, her heart pounding as she faced Derek in a sterile courtroom. He smirked, his suit crisped, but his eyes betrayed fear. Amara spoke clearly, recounting the wedding, the campaign fraud, and the community's betrayal. The judge listened, her face unreadable. When Amara stepped down, Lena squeezed her hand. "You did good." That night, news broke. Derek was under investigation, his law license at risk. Amara watched the report on her phone, her brother asleep beside her. She felt no joy, only relief. Justice wasn't loud or showy, it was steady, like the hum of the laundromat below her apartment. But the fight had changed her. She wasn't just a waitress, not just a manager. She was a voice for those who'd been silenced. The community center became Amara's anchor. She poured herself into it, organizing art classes, job fairs, and mentorship programs. The kids called her Miss A, their trust hard-earned but fierce. Jamal started visiting, his health improving thanks to Elisa's funding.
One day he sang at a workshop, his voice clear and strong, bringing tears to Amara's eyes. The staff rallied around her, their skepticism replaced by loyalty. Even Carl, the hotel manager who'd fired her, sent an apology note admitting he'd been wrong. But challenges remained. The center's budget was tight, and some community members doubted a waitress could lead. Amara ignored the noise, focusing on results. She secured a grant from Marcus's foundation, renovating the center's gym and adding a computer lab. Word spread, and volunteers started showing up. Local artists, teachers, even a retired lawyer who'd heard about her stand against Derek. Amara felt the weight of their trust, but also its strength. She was building something real, something lasting. Amara started a youth council, letting the kids pitch ideas. Ty suggested a music studio, a place for kids to record their songs. Amara made it happen, scraping together donations and equipment. The studio's first track, a rap about Atlanta's streets, went viral online, crediting the center. Amara watched the views climb, her heart swelling. The kids were finding their voices just as she had. Elise visited, bringing her father, who praised Amara's work. "You're changing this city," he said. Amara smiled, but her mind was on the next goal, a scholarship fund for the kids. One night, Ty pulled her aside. "Miss A, you stopped that wedding to help someone you barely knew. Why?" Amara paused, thinking of Jamal, her mother, the years of being just a waitress. "Because someone had to," she said. Ty nodded, his eyes bright. "You're like us. You get it." Amara's throat tightened. She wasn't just leading, she was one of them, and that made all the difference. Just as the center gained traction, a new threat emerged. A developer, backed by Derek's old allies, proposed a luxury condo project that would displace the center. Amara saw the plans in the local paper. Her heart sank. The community rallied, but the developer's influence was strong, and rumors swirled that they'd bribed city officials. Amara called a meeting, the youth council and staff packing the center's gym. "We're not losing this," she said, her voice firm. The kids cheered, their energy electric. Amara knew this fight would be bigger than Derek's. It was about the soul of their community. She reached out to Lena, who connected her with a journalist digging into the developer's shady deals. Amara organized protests, the kids painting signs and chanting outside City Hall. The story gained traction, trending online with hashtag #SaveOurCenter. Amara stood at the front, her voice steady on megaphones, her heart racing. She wasn't just fighting for the center, she was fighting for every kid who'd found hope there, for every dream she'd helped spark. The city council meeting was packed, the air thick with tension. Amara stood at the podium, her notes trembling in her hands. She'd never spoken to a crowd this big, but the kids' faces in the audience, Ty, Jamal, and dozens more, gave her strength. She told their stories, the girl who'd escaped abuse through art classes, the boy who'd landed a job through the center's training. "This isn't just a building," she said. "It's a lifeline." The developer's lawyer scoffed, citing progress and economic growth. But Amara's words hit harder, her raw honesty cutting through the room. Elise and Marcus sat in the back, their presence a quiet support. The journalist's expose dropped that morning, linking the developer to illegal permits. The crowd murmured, council members shifting uncomfortably. Amara seized the moment. "You can build your condos anywhere," she said, "but you can't build what we've got here." The kids stood, holding signs, their voices rising. The council voted to halt the project, pending investigation. Cheers erupted, Amara's eyes stinging with tears. They'd won, for now. The victory sparked change. The center's story spread, inspiring other communities to fight for their spaces. Amara became a reluctant spokesperson, her face on news channels, her voice on podcasts. She hated the spotlight, but loved what it did for the kids. Donations poured in, enough to fund the scholarship program. Jamal enrolled, his dream of music school suddenly real. Amara's mother visited the center, her frail frame wrapped in a shawl, her pride brighter than the chandeliers at the Grand Opal. "You did it, baby," she said. Amara hugged her, the weight of years lifting. But Amara stayed grounded. She still wore her old sneakers, still ate lunch with the staff, still listened to the kids. Derek's trial ended with a conviction, his schemes exposed. Ethan faded from the public eye, his campaign dead. Elise became a friend, helping Amara navigate the city's elite circles. Together, they planned a citywide youth program, linking sinners like Amara's. The waitress who'd stopped a wedding was now a leader, her voice echoing far beyond that stage. One evening, Amara stood in the center's music studio, watching Ty record a new track. The beat pulsed, his lyrics raw and real. She thought of the wedding, the mic in her hand, the moment she'd chosen to act. It hadn't been about fame or reward, it had been about doing right. Now the center was thriving, the kids were dreaming, and Jamal was singing again. She stepped outside, the Atlanta skyline glittering like the banquet hall that night. The air was cool, the stars bright. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, but she carried that strength with her, the strength of someone who'd always known what mattered. Her phone buzzed, a message from Elise. "You changed everything. Thank you." Amara smiled, pocketing the phone. She didn't need thanks. She needed this. The hum of the center, the laughter of the kids, the promise of tomorrow. She'd stopped a wedding, started a movement, and found her voice. And in that quiet moment, she knew justice always found its way. A year later, the community center was unrecognizable. The gym gleamed, the computer lab hummed, and the music studio churned out tracks that echoed across Atlanta.
Marcus and Elise became partners, funding expansions across the city. Amara spoke at their gala, her voice clear, no mic needed. She told the crowd about the kids, about second chances, about the power of doing right. The applause was warm, but Amara's eyes were on the kids in the back, grinning. They were her why. Later, she found a note from Ty. "You showed us we're not invisible. Keep singing, Miss A." She tucked it away, her heart full. Late at night, Amara sat in her apartment, the laundromat's hum a familiar comfort. She opened a scrapbook, filled with photos from the center. Kids painting murals, Jamal at his first recital, the protest signs from City Hall. She'd come far from that wedding night, but the journey wasn't over. The developers' allies were still out there, and new fights loomed. But Amara was ready. She'd learned to trust her voice, to lean on her community, to keep going. Her mother called, her voice bright. "You're my hero," she said. Amara laughed, tears falling. "You taught me how." She thought of the guests who'd called her just a waitress, of Derek's sneer, of Ethan's lies. They'd underestimated her, but so had she. Not anymore. She closed the scrapbook, her resolve still. The center was her home, her fight, her legacy, and she'd protect it no matter what came next. The center's story went global, shared on social media with millions of views. Amara's speech at the gala trended. Her words, "We're not just surviving, we're building," a rallying cry. She got letters from strangers, kids inspired to start their own programs, adults who'd found courage in her story. One day, a girl approached her at the center, shy but determined. "I saw you online," she said. "I want to be like you." Amara knelt, smiling. "You already are. Just keep going." As the sun set over Atlanta, Amara stood outside the center, the sign glowing, Amara Jackson Community Hub. The name had been the kids' idea, a surprise for her birthday. She touched the letters, her heart swelling. She'd stopped a wedding to protect one person. Now she was lifting up a city. The stars above shone bright, and Amara knew this was just the beginning.